Good afternoon and welcome to our research proposal presentation. First of all, I'd like to give you an overview of what this research is about. So, we have by name the influence of socioeconomic status on students' academic success in English in urban public secondary schools in Medellin. This is going to be presented by Dani Aguilar, Caterina Rivera, Tatiana Perez, and Juan Montoya. So, in order to get started, let's go with the research question, and the objective, which is going to be broken down by Danny. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Juanma. And let's move on with this. Our research question is how does socioeconomic status influence students' academic success in English in urban public secondary schools in Medellin? Why did we choose this research question? It is because we are aiming or we are looking for, let's say, we want um, to know and to understand the relationship between socioeconomic status and students' academic success and students' academic outcomes. Um, our main objective is to analyze how socioeconomic status influence students' academic success and their English language learning process in urban public secondary schools in Medellin. We chose this objective because um, it allowed us to study in depth and understand how different factors are connected and related each other, and not just to describe them. On the next slide, we have the specific objectives. The first one is to explore students' perception and how their socioeconomic condition affects their access to education. And you can see the rest of the sentence on the screen. Um, we choose this verb that is to explore, because we want to focus on students' personal experiences and perceptions. And since perceptions are mainly not mainly because perceptions are subjectives, this verb allowed us to approach them in an open and flexible way without limiting the students' responses. The second specific objective is to identify common patterns in student actions and so on. You can see that on the screen. And why? Why did we choose this bear to take in this specific objective? It is because our intention is to find recurring trends or patterns or similarities among students. And the last one is to examine the influence of factors such as student participation and classroom interaction on learning outcomes. Um, why? Because we want to look closely at elements such as I said before, the participation and classroom interaction, in order to understand how these factors affect learning outcomes. Based on our research question, main objectives and specific objectives, Juan Manuel is going to present the paradigm that we are going to use in our research. So, Juanma, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny, for your contribution. Well, as Danny has stated previously, our research approach is going to be the interpretivist. Well, we chose an interpretivist paradigm because our study is really about understanding how students see and experience their own realities. instead of assuming that everyone is affected in the same way by socioeconomic conditions. We want to recognize that each student interprets these experiences differently. This approach helps us explore those personal meanings and understand how they shape their learning process in English. In line with this paradigm, we adopted a qualitative approach. And we also use that qualitative approach because we're interested in going deeper into students' experiences, not just by collecting numbers or statistics, but by using tools like interviews and observations so that we can understand what students think, feel, and go through in their learning processes. This allows us to capture the complexity of how their socioeconomic context really affects their English learning. So now let's move on with the methodology by Kate. So go ahead, you have the word.
Thank you, Juan Manuel, for your interpretation. Now, based on this framework, we selected the following methodological approach, which is phenomenology. We choose it because it focuses on understanding individuals' lived experiences. In this study, we are interested in how students experience the influence of their socioeconomic conditions on their academic success and their English learning process. This methodology is appropriate because it allows us to analyze students' perceptions within their real educational context, especially in urban public schools in Medellin. In addition, it is consistent with our use of interviews, since this method helps us collect detailed descriptions of students' experiences and better understand how social and economic factors affect their learning process. Well, now that we have the theoretical base, let's move on the data collection. Tatiana, the floor is yours.
So thank you so much, Kate. So to gather our data, we use the following methods. The first one is semi-structured interview. The second one is open-ended surveys and questionnaires. And for the last one is classroom observation. So for the first objective, which is to explore students' perceptions of how their socioeconomic conditions affect their access to educational materials and their English learning experiences, we will use the first one, which is semi-structured interview. This method is appropriate because it allows students to express their personal experiences in detail. Through their answers, we can better understand how their socioeconomic conditions influence their access to educational materials and consequently their academic success in English. For the second objective, which is to identify common patterns in students' access to educational materials and their learning conditions, will we use the second one, which is open-ended surveys and questionnaires. This method is useful because it allows us to collect data from a larger group of students, not just one. Their responses help us identify similarities and differences in their access to educational materials, which is directly related to their socioeconomic status and academic success. And for the last one, the third objective, which is to examine, I'm sorry, how classroom factors influence students' learning outcomes. So we are going to use classroom observation. This method allows us to analyze students' learning conditions in a real context. Through observations, we can identify how access to educational materials influences students' academic performance in English. So we finish with this, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.